Kristin, there's a lot going on right now. A lot of us have got a little bit more time on our hands than we had otherwise anticipated. If we want to maximize this time and get our financial life together once and for all, if we want to be the CFO of our life, what are like the top steps that we should do that we can do literally today? Like, what can I do to start getting the ball rolling?
These are my favorite kinds of conversations because I love to-do lists and I love action and I love using kind of the opportunity of like what can sometimes be either whether you're experiencing like frustration or whatever, boredom for some people, like what you can do in this time to kind of better your life. So let's do a few disclaimers. First is I am a financial advisor. I am not a CPA. Or an accountant or a tax filer. So I have a lot of understanding and knowledge of taxes, but I am not an expert in that. So I can't answer all your tax questions. Secondly, I don't like to make like blanket recommendations on investing, but I am going to do my best to kind of give you a lay of the land of maybe some things you should be thinking about. So get your notebook ready and get your notes ready to, okay, let's do this. Okay, so the first thing I want to talk about is inventory, okay? So here we are, we're home, and some of us are trying to like do our jobs at home and homeschool my kids. P.S. There's like a 96% chance that someone walks through this door at any given moment, so just bear with me if that happens. So they're super cute. But anyway, so we're all kind of trying to do our things at home. Some of us have had, unfortunately, situation where maybe you have been furloughed or laid off. Some people have had to take cuts in their pay. Some people are just freelancers or business owners, and their businesses have gone down. And I'm, I know how difficult this is for all of you. I have so many clients who have been affected by this. I have so many. My sister got furloughed yesterday. Like, there's a lot of people out there who are struggling. And so I just want to make this as friendly to those people and to those of us at home who maybe haven't been touched financially. But I think the first thing we'd have to do is we do an inventory. So it sounds very like dry and like when I used to work at the cosmetic store, but you have to kind of figure out what everything looks like. And the thing that I would say here is let's see if you can figure out what your net worth is, right? So net worth, notebook time, is net worth equals assets minus liabilities, which is what you own minus what you owe equals your net worth, okay? So it's a pretty straightforward concept, but sometimes figuring out your net worth can be a little tricky. So what you have to do is you go through take it side by side. It's like, if you ever took an accounting class, right? So you're gonna figure out your assets first. And your assets are your cash, obviously. Assets are any kind of investments that you have. Those could be investments that you have in just a regular investment account. It could be investments that you have in an IRA, a 401k, a 403b. An asset is your home if you own it. An asset could be your car if you own it. It could be your weird boat that I know you all own. Everyone owns a boat these days, am I right? It could be art. It could be jewelry. It could be whatever. There's a difference, obviously, between liquid assets and illiquid assets. The most liquid asset that you own is cash, right? That's the barometer of liquidity. And then there's, from varying different degrees from cash, is how liquid or illiquid your assets are. So start there, figuring out what it is you have. This is a good time for you to be going through your accounts, looking at your checking account, your savings account, going back and looking at old retirement accounts maybe you haven't checked in a while. This is also a really good time to be checking in on what's happened to your money in the last few months, which I'm going to give you a spoiler. It hasn't been great. Good debt and bad debt. The good debt in your life is generally your mortgage. Sometimes it could be student loans, depending on how crazy the student loans are. You have to kind of dig through and look what your debt is. Credit card debt, personal debt, any kind of loans you have against securities, that kind of thing. And you kind of need to add all that up. Now remember that when you're doing this, and if you own a house, for instance, the value of your home is your asset minus the value of your mortgage is your liability. That equals the net equity that you have on your house. Okay. So if you paid $500,000 for if your home is worth $500,000 and you have a $300,000 mortgage, you essentially have a $200,000 equity stake in your home. Okay. That is your asset. So now that you've kind of established your left-hand side as assets, your right-hand side as liabilities, you can kind of figure out now what your net worth is. Some people have a positive net worth. Some people have a negative net worth. If you have more liabilities, if you owe more than you own, you have a negative net worth. So this is kind of part one, is creating this little map for yourself and understanding where everything lives. Part two is the B word. So one of my dearest friends just joined, and she is an expert in all things economics, right, Paige? And so she said, if we need any help, just go to her. I had to coach her through econ in college, just so we're clear. So the next thing we're going to focus on is budget. And everybody hates budgeting. I hate budgeting. You hate budgeting. We all hate budgeting. But this is a really interesting time for us to take stock in the kind of big question that we all have, which is, where the hell does my money go, right? Which is a pretty fair question. In non-quarantine life, our money was generally going to a lot of things that we couldn't really track. So there's the things in your life that you can't change no matter what happens. There's your rent or your mortgage. There's your utilities, your phone bill, your overhead, okay? We all can pretty much get a pretty decent sense of what our overhead is. The problem with budgeting is not your fixed costs that you know that you have to pay no matter what happens. The biggest problem with budgeting is the je ne sais quoi of budgeting. The, I've had it said, I call it ether spending. The like, where did I just spend $200 this week? I think I bought like a lip gloss, and maybe I took an Uber and I ordered out, and now I have no idea where my money is. And quarantine life is an interesting time to be focusing on this, because you can kind of start to say, well, hey, I'm not spending any of that money on these things other than maybe like takeout. You are not able to kind of just spend mindlessly. And this is a really interesting opportunity to kind of go back, take a 3-month look back on what you have spent, where you have spent it, and focusing on things like subscriptions. So I had a call with somebody the other day who, after doing this project, she had $496 a month in subscriptions, which was like every kind of streaming service, every kind of news service. It was truly outrageous, right? So things that can be eliminated. There's a lot of memberships right now that we're not using. There's just a lot of life that we're not living. But being honest in your budget and actually accounting for things like hair, massages, trips to like the nail salon. I know this sounds like I'm stereotyping you all, but I'm really not. Like, these are all things that we spend money on, but we don't necessarily account in our budgets. And it's things that we are not spending money on right now. So if you can be thoughtful about those, kind of the money that you're saving right now, and be more thoughtful about going forward, like maybe you can cancel 3 subscriptions that you don't need. Maybe you don't need your...
So like go through your credit card, like, or your debit card, and literally just go through, because I've been doing that for the business this week to see if there's any ways we can save money. But do you recommend that people literally go through line by line?
Yes, I do.
And just be like, cut, yeah?
Yeah. Because what you're doing is like, you can start to develop trends when you go back. There has to be like a 3-month look back at least, because right now gauging your spending is worthless. You're not doing anything. You're not spending like you normally are. So you can't do a good job of your budget, right? So you need to go back to do December, January, February, go back and figure out, and you can start to like take a good old fashioned like highlighter and just go through and start highlighting in different colors, different categories. And all of a sudden you're realizing like, oh, like I don't really need to spend, $800 a month on like my personal care. And so this is where you can kind of get a sense of what you need in your life and what you don't, and what you can cut out. And currently, like this second, think about what you are not spending money on and where that money should be going. right? So if you don't already have an emergency,
live without a long-term kind of thing.
Right. I mean, listen, there's no better time than now than to create an emergency savings, an emergency fund. We're all living in a world where having an emergency fund is crucial, right? I mean, people are getting laid off left and right. And so if you don't have money saved, this could be a really scary situation for you. So kind of creating this emergency fund. If you have an emergency fund, then allocate that money towards other things. Start potentially thinking about investments. You could put that money towards retirement accounts. You could put that money in investments. If you have debt, use that money towards really attacking your debt. And you should always be thinking about attacking your debt as, highest interest rate first. So credit cards are going to usually be on the top. Then you're going to have some kind of middle of the road if you have any personal loans or things like that. Then it's generally student debt, and then it's generally your mortgage debt.
And how much, when you say an emergency fund, like how much are we talking here? Like if someone's today, it's like the first time they've ever kind of like attacked their finances, like how much money are we talking?
Yeah, so everybody has a kind of a different view on this. My particular view is anything less than zero. I mean, anything more than zero should be your emergency fund, right? So don't stress yourself out about saying like, oh, I need 6 months of overhead, otherwise I haven't achieved a goal. It's a nice goal to have. 6 months of overhead is lovely, but don't like whip yourself on the daily if you don't have that saved. What you should really be thinking about is getting yourself any kind of emergency fund. So figure out how you can start doing that, even if you are paying off debt, how you can divert, whether it's $100 or $200 a week, a month, whatever it is, into some kind of account. And here's the trick with the emergency fund. Put it somewhere that is not easily accessible to you. And I don't mean like your mattress. I mean, figure out a place, a financial institution that is not connected to your checking account, because this is what happens. You create a little emergency savings account and it sits next to your checking account. And then you're like, ooh, cute, I need you. And you just move it over and then suddenly your savings account is gone, right? So what you need to do is you need to take the savings and you need to move it out and you need to put it somewhere else so that you're kind of creating almost work for yourself to get that money. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does. And so we've talked about like, we want to try and cut out any unnecessary expenses. We want to create an emergency fund and we want to pay off debt. What about like, I'm conscious of time and we're going to wrap it up soon. And people that want to keep in touch with Kristin can follow her on Instagram. She's at The Girl Who Saves Money. You can also go to her website. It's kristinmerrickfa.com. Awesome tips and blogs on there. But what about like other things peripheral that people should be thinking about? Should we be thinking about life insurance, income protection insurance? Is there anything else like peripheral to like specific finances that now is actually a great time to kind of dig in and just sort out once and for all?
Let me kind of do speed round of things that should be on your list right now. So first and foremost, if you haven't already filed your taxes, you should be filing your taxes, especially if the government owes you money. If the government owes you money, you should have already filed. Get your money. Get it. Okay. So that's part one. Part two is if you get a refund, figure out what you're going to do with that refund. This is an interesting time to consider investing. We've had an extremely, extremely scary move from basically the end of February till, a few weeks ago. We have made some moves back a little bit, and things are starting to look a little bit more stable. There's still opportunities. If you haven't made IRA contributions for 2019, you can still do that if you haven't filed. If you want to make IRA contributions for 2020, you can do that. That means money going into the market, and that's money that you are not going to be using until you're an old lady or man. And that means that you can potentially take advantage of a kind of a pullback in the market, buy some things cheap, and take advantage of the inevitable appreciation of those things. If you have, or for somebody who has a little bit of cash on the sidelines and can't quite figure out what that next step is, then consider using that money and starting an investment account. Or consider increasing your contributions to your 401k, things like that. The other thing I would say, and thank you, Maggie. Maggie loves when I talk about insurance. She's literally the only person on the planet that gets excited about when I talk about life insurance.
Well, it's so boring, but you managed to make it interesting, so.
Make it all interesting. Life insurance is one of these things that if you have any liabilities, any large liabilities, whether that's debt, whether that's student debt, mortgage, even personal debt, you should have some kind of life insurance on yourself in the event that something were to happen to you, that your beneficiaries are not left high and dry. If you have children, if you have a business, if you have a spouse, you should have some kind of life insurance. Life insurance is not as scary as everyone makes it seem. It's relatively affordable, especially if you are a person kind of decent health and of a decent age, a younger age. It should not be a scary thing for you. If you are married, if you are getting married, if you have joint now liabilities, you should definitely be considering life insurance. If you need any help with that, you should get in touch with me. It is something that we do. So I guess maybe 1 minute. Who's got some questions?
We love questions. And thank you so much, Kristin. Yeah, so people who do want to get in touch, definitely follow along with Kristin. She's at The Girl Who Saves Money. We have a question here from Nicole. Are there any user-friendly platforms for people who want to start investing? For example, E-Trade, Schwab, etc. I know, Kristin, you help people invest specifically, but are there any like automated tools that you also suggest?
Yeah. So I would recommend that if you've never invested before, you should kind of be going down the road of using a platform that has some kind of ready-made investment vehicle for you. For instance, like a Betterment or an Ellevest, they will have kind of, you fill out like a little risk survey, and then they kind of tell you which bucket you should be investing your money in. An E-Trade, a Schwab, a TD Ameritrade, all of those things are great platforms, but those are generally designed for people who are going to be creating their own portfolios. So unless you have decided you want to become like a stock picker, you should probably go, for your first time, you should probably be going down the road that will give you some guidance and give you some help in the investment choices.
If anyone hasn't invested with Ellevest before, and if you want to, send me a DM at PepTalkHer. They've actually given us a code to share with you as well, which is super helpful. I think you get $50 in the account, something great. Like that. I'll send you the specifics. But yeah, Kristin as well, like I know that you specifically work with women, like that is your niche as a financial advisor. What are one of the top mistakes that you see women making that's really easy for us to kind of overcome?
I love this question. Hopefully. Favorite question. Okay, so the biggest problem that I see with women in investing is that generally women don't take appropriate amounts of risk. What that usually means is they don't take enough risk, okay? This has a lot to do with how we've been taught about risk in our entire lives, or how we've been kind of taught as girls, so to speak. I could like go on like a 3-month rabbit hole on this if you really want me to, but one of my goals as an advisor is to constantly make sure that you aren't making that mistake and you are kind of allocating properly. So for instance, there's like crazy statistics that women end up with significantly less money in their retirement accounts than men. Some of those reasons is because women get pulled out of the workforce, but one of the main reasons is because they're not taking enough risk in the retirement accounts. So you should always be pretty thoughtful about what your time horizon is when you're investing. And if your time horizon is 20 or 30 or 40 years, you should be making sure that you are taking more risk as opposed to less risk, so that you take advantage of the compound interest of over that period. And compound interest is also one of my favorite things to talk about.
I'm a massive nerd and I love talking about compound interest as well. It is your best friend if you don't know about it. So the best time to start investing, as they say, is yesterday. And the second best time is, today or tomorrow. So thank you so much, Kristin. We're so grateful that you were able to join us today. Check her out. She's at The Girl Who Saves Money on Instagram. KristinMerrickFA.com.
I miss you.
Specializing in women, all about it. So thank you so much for joining us. And we'll be back the same time tomorrow for the Power Pep Talk. Thank you.